Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's webinar from Datacolor. And I'm Boris Bergman from Datacolor, and I'd like you to welcome to this webinar. Tonight it will be Bob Campbell from onOne and Richard West who will do the presentation. And after that presentation, the duration will be about 60 minutes. We will go into the chat, and you have the possibility to enter all the questions you have. And it's now for me to say hello. Hello, Rich. Hello, Bob. Are you there?
We are indeed. Hello, Boris. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the session. Ironic that we call this the highlights of 2013 when Bob's launching a software, so sneaking in at the end of the year with his highlight for us here. Tonight, basically, we're very pleased to have Bob on board to show us the latest from onOne and their latest suite of software. So I think without further ado, we'll hand over to Bob and let him wow us with the what's new in the suite.
Thanks very much, Richard. That's great.
Oh, okay, Bob, please share your screen with us.
Thanks, Boris. That should be coming up in a couple of seconds, hopefully. So, good evening, everybody. I'm Bob Campbell from onOne Software. There we go. I think it's on screen now. That's a picture of me, by the way. So I'm probably the oldest person presenting to you tonight by a significant number of years. That's also my email address for no other reason than you could get some free presets off me tonight if you take a look at what we're going to be doing. And what we're going to be talking about, I'm just going to switch my screen to play my slides. It looks as though there's a slight delay this evening, probably 3 or 4 seconds. So I'll speak quite slowly and I'll try and pace the presentation to suit, especially those people online whose language or first language isn't English. So let's go to the first slide. What we're talking about tonight is onOne Software's Perfect Photo Suite 8. So as Richard said, when we started working with Datacolor a few months ago and we did some presentations, we were actually talking about the previous version. We now have the completely up-to-date version of products that are designed specifically for digital photographers to manipulate their images. And clearly, most of you, I imagine, will be Photoshop users. That's great because all of our products work as plugins inside of Adobe Photoshop CS6 and the Creative Cloud solution from Adobe. They're also plugins, of course, because they're aimed at photographers for Adobe Photoshop Lightroom 4 and 5. They're plugins, of course, for Apple's Aperture RAW-based workflow, the Apple equivalent, if you will, of Lightroom, and they're plugins for Photoshop Elements, generally amateur photographers who are starting out in the world of digital manipulation. And now, of course, all of onOne programs are standalone applications in their own right. So if for some strange reason you don't want to adopt a cloud solution, say for Photoshop, then you can use our suite in standalone mode anyway. I'm going to leave this little slideshow because literally that was it. And I'm just going to close the little panel down. By the way, I'm using a Macintosh, so if you're a Windows user, don't worry when you see a strange little dock appear at the bottom of the screen with all my applications. That's fine. The first screen that you'll see is actually Adobe Photoshop CS6. Now, we make sure that all of our programs work where you as a digital photographer will be most comfortable. If you love Photoshop and you've spent a long time learning it and a lot of money probably besides, then we want to make sure that our plugins work for you inside of Photoshop. So you find a little panel, and I'll drag the panel across into the middle of the Photoshop workspace, and that gives me access to all of my plugins. There's an alternative place where you find your plugins. You just go to File inside of Photoshop, of course, and you go to Automate, which is where you'll find any plugins from people like Google. The Nick plugins are obviously part of Google now. Alien Skin, all sorts of different companies obviously manufacture plugins. I think we're the only ones to have a nice little neat panel that will fit into any part of the Photoshop interface. I'll leave Photoshop for the time being, and I'll just take a very quick look at Adobe Photoshop Lightroom for you. So your Photoshop panel will disappear, then Lightroom will appear hopefully in about 3 or 4 seconds. And inside of Lightroom, a RAW-based workflow, the limitation to a program like Lightroom and Apple's Aperture, very similar programs but obviously different platforms, are that you could not work in layers previously. But now, because we have our suite inside of Lightroom, I just go to File and I go to Plugin Extras, and I can see all of my products, including the entire Perfect Photo Suite 8, available to you within a Lightroom interface. So it means perhaps using this suite you might not need to go back into Photoshop if you don't want to migrate to the cloud. Everything could be done from within a Lightroom workflow. Okay. So I'm going to show you a few new features of the suite. So if anybody saw this a couple of months back when we worked with Datacolor on Suite 7, I just want to show you what the differences are. And the first thing we'll take a look at is, first of all, the suite in standalone mode. And really, it's a note about the interface. I'm actually in a place that didn't exist the last time we did this presentation, and it's called Perfect Browse. And Perfect Browse is where I find my files, because of course photographers these days are working in a world where all your files could be online, in cloud solutions and services. Then we need to be sure that you can find them. And if you look at the little sources panel to the left-hand side of this little browser, I can see I have a Dropbox folder, Google Drive, iCloud, PhotoStream, SkyDrive, whatever the solution is that you have online and in the cloud, you can get your files from there now. I'm a pretty simple soul, so all I'm doing is using files that are stored on my desktop at the moment. So desktop is highlighted. Here are my folders. I have a recent option. So for instance, if I click on an image inside Recents, bottom left-hand corner of the browser, then I'll find an image that I've been working on over the past couple of days to manipulate using my different programs. If I don't want to use Recent, I'll just go back to my desktop where I have a folder view of everything, and we'll just dip back into a folder that gives me access to my images. And the first thing we're going to do is to click on a car, happily entitled Funeral Car. Well, don't worry about that. It just happened to be a picture that I wanted to use in a Halloween presentation in November. So, quite a nice picture of a car. I want to embellish this image. I want to make it look a little less soft. I won't tell you which camera I use, but I do use cheap lenses, so they're always a bit soft. I'm going to take this car into a starting place in the suite called Perfect Layers. And now you'll see a little dialog in the middle of the screen that invites me to edit a copy, edit the original image, which I very, very rarely do, or add this image as a layer to an existing file. I'm just going to say edit a copy, say OK, and by the way I can select the color space that I want to work in. I'm sure Richard will be talking about color spaces a bit later. And we start in Perfect Layers. Here I have all the tools that I need to edit this picture, and to be perfectly honest, the picture's not that bad, although I say it myself. But I do have tools in here that will let me take out any little blemishes and bits and pieces. I have a little mini browser on the left-hand side of the screen. The tools are things like transform tools, clipping tools, cropping tools, brushes. There's now something here called the Perfect Eraser. And this is very similar to content-aware fill inside of Photoshop. So I'm going to do some very simple retouching on this image. Okay, so I'm going to use my Perfect Eraser. First of all, I'll zoom in to the car so we see it a little bit bigger. And I'll just adjust my workspace down a little bit so there's a little bit more space either side of the car. And if I need to, I can switch my browser off from one side of the image to the other so we have the full picture right in the middle of the screen. Now with my Perfect Eraser, I'll just click on it and I'll start to draw over any little parts of the image that just distract from the basic picture. That little white line to the left of the car's wing, the little stones on the ground, I'll just take those away as well. Okay. Now there's a little piece of sunlight just behind the left-hand side wheel. I'll take that away as well because that really is a distraction. And then I'll take away the little bit of white line on the right side of the car. So very simple retouching, but very effective and very fast. You might not have noticed yet, but there's actually some little legs that are squashed up in the bumper of the car. They're my legs. I'm going to take those out with the Shift key so we get a straight line little selection there. Let go. And in a second or two, the legs are gone. Okay, so very simple retouching, beautiful little piece of software. The Perfect Eraser really simplifies processes. Now, I quite like the image, but I would like to just first of all crop it. So I'm going to take a little bit off the left and right side. It's pretty horizontal, so that's good. I don't need to rotate it. Just say apply to the crop. And now I'm going to take it into Perfect Effects. Now, Perfect Effects is one of the components of the suite. The way we've built the suite is into the segments that we know photographers need to use. So we have a layering routine, we have an enhancing routine, we have a portrait routine for adjusting portraiture, we have a black and white routine for turning images into monochrome images, we have a masking routine, which we'll quickly look at in a few minutes, and we have perfect resize for perfect interpolation up to 1000%. In Perfect Effects, I'm going to go into something called dynamic contrast. Before I do, I'll just show you bleach bypass, and we'll apply a filter to this car that will simulate the effect of bypassing the bleaching process in color development from many, many years ago. Let's call it High Key Warm. On the left-hand side, I have thumbnails of these effects. A single click applies that effect into the picture of the car. Okay? Now, it's going to take a couple of seconds for you to just follow me, and I think it's probably happened now for you. That's great. I'm going to take the layer opacity and reduce it a bit. So it's not quite such an intense effect. It's not quite so dark, but it's definitely bleaching out some of the color detail, which is an interesting effect. So that's how simple effects work inside of Perfect Effects. There are hundreds of them, and each one can be edited almost infinitely. If there's any mathematicians out there, give me 100 to the power of 8, I think it is, and see what size number you get. It can't be that far off infinity, surely. Anyway, I'm going to use something instead, though, called dynamic contrast. If I click on the box that says Surreal, and notice it's got a little flag, which means I've previously selected it as a favorite because I want to be able to find the best effects quickly, click on Surreal. Beautiful. The effect it's given me is far more intense chrome. Okay? I'm going to adjust a couple of sliders that enable me to control the amount of detail that's going into the very large areas of the image and the smallest areas. A large area on this picture might be those beautiful wings on the front of the car. A detailed small area will be the tiny little details of chrome on the front of the car. Okay? Now you'll notice that I've affected the wings a little bit too much. I'm blowing out the beautiful graded effect of the metal, the beautiful paintwork on those wings. So I'm going to reduce the large area of the effect and the medium area as well. But I'm going to keep that tiny detail selected. Now I don't like what the effect is doing to the whole image, so I'm going to start to be selective. I'm going to use a brush called the masking brush, and I'm going to invert the effect. So we switch it off, okay? Now, I'm going to adjust some of the brush controls. Notice that we have little W's up here, or V's if you're in Europe, and those little W's or V's enable me to select a button that will apply pressure sensitivity from a Wacom tablet. So it's completely set up for Wacom working, if that's the way you like to work. I'm going to increase the size of a brush just to fit over the light, and I'm going to click. And the minute I click, the right-hand light of the car suddenly looks as though it's been switched on. Okay? The effect that we're having on dynamic contrast is to make a negative layer mask with a little white dot in it. If you look at the filter stack, click again, and then click again on the chrome, and start to brush the effect in. By the way, I'm using a mouse this evening. I'm not using a Wacom, because I just want to do it the way a lot of you will be doing it, just with a mouse. I'm going to reduce the opacity of the effect now, and the reason I'm brushing in, remember, is to make sure that I don't affect the beautiful smoothness of the wings. Now I can start to paint in the reflections and the detail around the edge of the car and then at the side of the car. I'm using quite a big brush, by the way, but that's just so you can see it. Now I'm going to increase the opacity again, right back up to 100, reduce the size of the brush, and click, and then shift-click and drag along the bumper where my legs were in the original image. Remember me taking my legs out? Sounds a bit painful. Honestly, it wasn't. I'm going to just click on the little lights, so we highlight the lights. Beautiful. Now what we'll do is to add a new layer, and this time I'm going to go to something called borders, and I'm going to type in a word of a border that I know is really nice, and it's called Dano, okay? I'm going to click on Dano and apply it into that top empty layer. Then I'm going to move down where the car is and adjust the thickness of that particular layer, frame, edge, border, whatever you decide to call it. In fact, I'm going to reduce the size of the image a little bit as well by just moving the little sliders. And there now I've got a beautiful effect with a frame applied to it. Now, because I've done this work, I can just go to Preset and say Save Preset. So any amount of work that I do on my image in Perfect Effects, in Perfect Enhance, in Perfect Layers, in Perfect Portrait, Black and White, Resize, I can save. I missed out Mask, because Mask is always pretty unique. Every image is going to be different. Let's look at some presets that I saved earlier. Go to Presets in the left-hand browser. Now I'm going to run down those presets and find a folder called Vintage Cars. I've got lots of shots. I like vintage cars. I'm a bit sad. I go to places and take pictures of cars. But then I could be a bird spotter, so it's probably good. Let's go to Vintage Cars. Let's go to one here. Okay. It's called Bob Rust Car Jeeves Worcester. Now, if you have onOne software and you want any of these presets, that's when you need to send me a little email to bcampbell@onesoftware.com, and I'll package these presets up and send them to you. So all you've got to do is to ask perhaps the Datacolor guys, or send me a quick email, and I'll happily send all of these presets if you like them. Now, this preset happens to be quite complicated. Look at it. It's got something called a texturizer, which is the rusty effect on the car. Again, just part of Perfect Effects. It's got two separate borders on it. One is called Dano, and there's a separate film border. Then there's a color enhancer, there's a bleach bypass, there's a texturizer, and there's a dynamic contrast. The headlights look a little bit dull in this, so I'm going to select that dynamic contrast layer. That will switch off all the other effects in the image. Go back to my brush, reset the effect, just switch from paint in, paint out, and let's just make sure we have the right size brush. Just say paint, invert the effect. I'll get this right in a minute. And then we'll just start painting in and out the effect and put that chrome back in there. That beautiful chrome, I think, looks really attractive. You might hate it, but remember, photography is very subjective, isn't it? I won't do too much more work on this. What we will do, though, is to switch on the rest of the effects, and there's my image. Now, what if we decided that we wanted to apply this effect, or an effect like it, to lots of different pictures? I would need to batch process, and the only way we could batch process using Perfect Photo Suite previously has been to use batch processing inside of Lightroom or inside of Photoshop using things like Bridge or using Actions. Well, I don't need to do that now, because if I cancel this effect, so we just get rid of the image, get rid of the effect anyway on the image, and I go to File, Batch, I get the option to add a series of effects to an image, and I'll show you how it works. Again, a screen, a little window will pop up in the middle of your screen. It's called Perfect Batch. I'm going to find a folder with some pictures. And the pictures I'm going to use, I'm sure, are on my desktop, and they're called Batch, surprisingly. Okay? I've got 3 pictures in there. So I'm going to choose that folder. I don't have any subfolders in that folder, so I'll just leave that unchecked. And I go down now and I say, click to add module. Any module from the suite, including something called Perfect Watermark. If I want to add watermarks to my images, obviously as a photographer, if I'm posting them online, I would need watermarks to protect them. I'm just going to go to Perfect Effects. I'm going to go to a series of presets and a category called Vintage Cars. Remember that? That's where I've saved some presets. I'm going to go to Bob Academy, Bob Carr, Bob Rust, Car, Jeeves, Worcester was one that we had. I'll use Vintage Car Frame, and I'm going to switch on Pause on First Image. So when the effect is applied to the first picture, which by the way isn't a car, it's a doorway, the pause means that I can make any adjustments to the effect. Then I can say, click to add module, another one. Do I have an effect in perfect black and white? Make a conversion to black and white, then apply a beautiful grayscale effect, and no, I don't. So I'm not going to apply any more effects. I'm going to save to a folder called Batch Changed. Okay? I'm going to pick Choose for that particular folder, and then I'm going to decide how I want to save my images. Do I want to name them? What color space do I want to use once again? What file size and type do I want to use? What's the quality of the JPEG that we save? And then say, OK. And what the software does first is open up the first picture. And as I said, it's a doorway in a chateau in France. And the effect, again, it's got a couple of frames on it, including my favorite Dano. It's pausing now because it wants me to decide whether the effect looks nice or does it look a bit too dark. I think it looks okay, so I'll say apply. And now the software will go through the process of applying the effect for me, and then saving the image for me, and then opening the next image, doing the same again, and then the next image, and the same again. And it shouldn't take too long. So the basic premise is that we've got a series of different components that we've decided to break up into a kind of workflow for you. What we've tended to find from lots of photographers is that when they have to use something like Photoshop, well, one issue is that as photographers, they're only going to use 10 or 15% of what Photoshop can do. And there's no clear designation or workflow inside of Photoshop to help them decide how to manipulate images. So for our software, all you might ever want to do as a photographer is to take a portrait, then you go to Perfect Portrait, you adjust your images, you remove blemishes, you have automated processes to do all that, and then you just want to save the image out, and that's your job done. Okay, so the batch has worked, I think. I'll close the images now. Just click back on my little browser, and if I click on Batch Changed, there are my 3 images, including the doorway to start with, and you'll see them in the left-hand side browser. Okay, now I'm going to do a little masking exercise. I'm hoping that we're going to finish Datacolor guys, Boris and Richard, at about 35 minutes past 7. The masking is always fun, but it leads into a look at as well, which of course is brand new. There's lots of new stuff in this Perfect Photo Suite 8. I probably won't have time to show everything, but let's just go back to our little beginner's guide. I'm going to switch the view for the browser to a 2-column view to make it a little bit simpler, and I'm going to open up another image. I'm going to say edit a copy of that image, and it should be a picture of a tree. Okay, very impressive piece of photography. It's mine, so don't laugh. I'm just a keen amateur photographer. Okay, now I want to remove that blue sky behind the tree and replace it with a new sky. So when I double click on the new sky in the browser, bottom left hand corner of the browser in fact, I'm going to say add as a layer. So this is not a separate image now, it's going to be part of the tree picture. Okay? The size is all wrong, so I'll use the transform tool and I'll scale it proportionally. This is all pretty standard fare for most pieces of software these days. I'm going to put it into position and then assess the sky and think the sun's coming in from the wrong angle, so I'm just going to flip it and then move it back so the sun brightens up a little bit and then say apply. Very simple stuff, very similar to anything you would do in Photoshop. For people who have older suites from onOne, the layers palette is now bigger, lots of little icons helping you decide what you want to do with the picture. With this sky, all I'm going to do is to drop it behind the tree. Now what we're going to do is to zoom in to the tree. In fact, before I go there, I'm going to go to perfect mask. So make sure I have the right layer selected for the image. Perfect mask. A few seconds later, the software analyzes the image for me, decides that what it needs to do is make a little segmentation process, which will do an automated mask of the picture. But because this image is quite complex, and I've just zoomed in, now zooming on a webinar will just take a few seconds for you to see the effect on screen. You can see the window I'm going to zoom into. There we are, zoomed in. Now I'm going to ignore the simplified masking processes here because this is a more complex image. I'm going to select some colors to keep in the picture, and I'm going to get a little range of colors, some grays, some slightly reddy sorts of grays, quite a nice little selection there. I'm going to keep those colors. I'm now going to drop the blue in the sky. Okay? And I'm only selecting a few colors. The keep colors are in the color palette on the left-hand side of the screen. The drop colors are on the right side of the screen, of the color palette. Okay? Right. Now, let's select a brush that will make a nice mask. And this brush is an intelligent brush. Unlike me, it's going to make the mask. And you should start to see the new background appear behind the tree. And it looks terrible. It's probably one of the worst masks I've ever seen. There is a problem with the color selection. And I would suggest that the problem is that we have a very bright color in the keep palette that is similar in tone, not quite similar in hue, but very similar in tone to the drop colors. So just select it, delete it, go back to the picture of, now. Okay, I'm going to wait for the brush to catch up a little bit, then I want you to tell me whether this is a good mask or not. I think it looks great. I think, as they say, I've nailed it. That's English, by the way. Hopefully there's a few English people on the webinar who will reckon. Nobody else will know what that means at all, but we've nailed it. It's a really detailed mask and it's working really well. I'm going to just select a couple of extra blues from the top of the image. Now I've zoomed out, just hitting the fit button in the navigator window. It's put the image back on the screen for me, and I'm going to carry on with the masking process, making sure that I mask behind the hedge so that we see some of the beautiful sunset, I think it was, behind the hedge coming into place. Just make the brush a little bit bigger and carry on the masking process. Now, Perfect Mask, we do entire webinars on the masking process. In fact, you know, this could be a good plug for a suggestion with the Datacolor guys that we do masking. Masking always gets a lot of interest from everybody, especially photographers. I'm aware, of course, that a lot of Datacolor users are graphic designers. We don't tend to sell a lot of our software solutions to graphic designers, perhaps apart from Perfect Resize, because it can do fantastic interpolation, absolutely brilliant. Developed by NASA's scientists, would you believe? Well, so they say. I have no way of knowing whether that's true or not, but it sounds feasible. It used to be called genuine fractals. It's perfect resize now. Now, I'm just going to select a quick masking brush, just wipe away the back. And before I hand back to Richard and Boris, I'm just going to apply that mask. Forgive me if there's any mistakes in the mask. It looks okay to me, but I'm not absolutely sure. We go back into perfect layers. So when I hit apply in perfect mask, effects, black and white, portrait, enhance, we can go back into Photoshop, we can go back into Lightroom, back into Elements, Aperture, and then we save our file out. In this case, because I'm using the suite in standalone mode, I've just gone back into perfect layers. Now I'm going to use a fill layer on the picture. So I'm going to click on the little bucket underneath the layers panel. I get my fill layer options here, so I can select a fill color. This is a 51%, that's pretty precise, white, okay? So I'll just say, okay. I want to make a beautiful blended mist on this image, okay? And the way to do that is to use a little square button in the tool palette, and it's called the masking bug. This tool is fantastic. Just look at this. Fingers crossed it was going to work, and luckily it did. Okay, so the masking bug gives me a gorgeous blended mask, a soft-edged mask, cutting through that color fill layer into the mask of the tree and, of course, the new sky. The dotted lines control the feather or the softness of the mask. The center lines, the solid lines, control the open area of the mask, if you will. If I bring those horizontal lines right down to the bottom, then it really makes the mask hard-edged, which I'd suggest we don't want, okay? If I push it up a little bit, it makes it nice and soft. Now, this is a reflected gradient mask. I would just like a standard gradient, so go to the type at the top of the workspace and select gradient. Now I've got control over the mask. And you click in the middle of the little circle, you can control the mask. Click in the tiny circle with the little arrows in it, and that rotates the mask. So obviously my image looks reasonably horizontal, so rotation should work okay. Hit the Shift key, and you get 45% increments to rotate. Horizontal is probably going to do it. I'll just increase the layer opacity a fraction to make a deeper mist, and then save the image out. And once I say save inside of Perfect Layers, I can save my image as your favorite PSD file, so it preserves all the layer masks and all the information on the image. I can save out as a TIFF, a JPEG, or whatever I want. So, for instance, if we just say, let's go as a PSD file. Let's save all the layers, including the beautiful layer mask that Perfect Mask gave me. I can't remember where I said save that. Let me just check. I'll just go there again. I'm hopefully saving it on the desktop. Save as. Oh, I saved it in the beginner's guide folder. So if I cancel that and now leave Perfect Photo Suite 8, I won't save that. So let me just find my folder, and then I'll hand over to the guys eagerly awaiting beginner's guide. And then Lone Tree. Is that the mask with the... No, it's not that one. Ah, Bob. Lone Tree PSD. There it is, with the mist. I'll just drop that into my Photoshop and embarrassingly show you that my Photoshop CS6 has actually timed out, so I'm using it in demo mode. So let's just, I'm sure it will tell me that I shouldn't be using it. There you go. Extended trial. Okay, thank you very much. Just see the image, and then switch on the layers panel, the layers palette, and there are the layer masks, the color fill layer, the Lone Tree, and the Malta Sky. So I'd just like to thank the Datacolor guys. Sorry, Richard, I've run over a little bit by a couple of minutes. If you want to take the screen back
That's
now.
fine, Bob. No worries.
Is that okay? And if I
yeah, indeed, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm passing it over to me as we speak. So
lovely.
Great, thanks, Bob. That's really good. Thank you kindly. A lovely glimpse at the new suite, it has to be said. So I'm sure there's far more we can be doing with yourself. So I'm keen to see the rest of the suite and you know, have more of more tuition on it myself now, basically. So I shall be coming down to your stand at the SWPP show in January, and obviously making sure that we learn a lot about what you're showing us there. So I take it do you know which hall you're in at the show?
Yeah, I think we're. Oh, you know, now you've got me. You put me on the spot. I can't remember the. Isn't I was going to say the Champagne Suite, but that's the old place, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, mate. It's either Monaco or Kings.
We're really close. We're really close to you, I think. In fact, I think we might be
I
next
think
door.
you are actually. Now you say that. In which case you're in the Monarch suite. So we'll
Monarch.
definitely be making sure we see the rest of how to use the software there. But that was great seeing that. I also get a feeling I now know what my Christmas card is going to look like from you as well. So, but thanks very much, Bob. That's superb. Now over to me, folks. Now I'm going to run through, as mentioned, sort of the highlights of the year as far as I'm concerned. Obviously kicking off by sharing the URL there for onOne, and if you want to find out more about the software, Bob did mention there's a special offer running at the moment to get professional presets and video guide as well with the purchase, so therefore that's go to the website and have a look for that, and by all means, as I say, come along and see, well, both of us will be at the Society show in January, basically, in London, so have a look on the SWPP site for that. So highlights of 2013. Okay, so in this section I'm going to give you a few different things. I'm going to give you a few promotions from some of our partners, some people that Bob's already mentioned. But as far as I'm concerned, one of the highlights for me this year was actually getting my hands on one of Datacolor's packages. It's two little pieces of kit, and it's the Spider Checker and the Spider Cube, or together the Spider Checker Pro. And fundamentally, it's solved a massive headache for me. So hence, I wanted to really sort of share this with you tonight, as far as the tips of the year are concerned. First part of this is the joys of the cube, and I mean, basically we're talking about a familiar situation, I'm sure, to all of us. And as much as we rush out there, we have our cameras with us, potentially we may take a grey card with us, but they can be quite cumbersome and not necessarily the easiest thing to pull out and shoot. So therefore we end up with a situation where you have perhaps some sort of image that you don't know what was white, what was not. Have I got a tint on here? Is this natural colors? You know, what's going on with my images? So the solution to this is having a nice spider cube in your bag. And I have to say, Christmas is coming and the rest of the festive season, so therefore perfect gift for the holiday season here, basically. Something that in this instance, obviously not quite a Christmas tree it's hanging on, but perhaps it could be. But essentially is a portable, pocketable, three-dimensional grey card, for want of a catch-all description. But it does much more than a grey card does, because as you can see here, it might look slightly hexagonal, but actually it's cubic, hence the name, and it gives you something you can slip into your pocket. So this is probably about 2 inches along a side, so a 2-inch square or 2-inch cube, and has both as you can see, a grey area, white area, black area, and catchlight and black catchlight as well. In fact, as you look at this, the top ball there is a scintillation ball. So the intention there is to catch any out of gamut areas using your out of gamut tools there, your gamut warnings, and that will be out of gamut 100% white up there on the 0% dot, whichever way you look at it, on the ball. In the black spot, or rather the blue spot as it is here, that's 100% black. Apart from that, the white and the black areas there that you're seeing, those are a 4% white and a 4% black. Therefore, the intention is you should be able to see some detail in there, and obviously you shouldn't get burnout as we're seeing here, just a fraction of it. So that's slightly over at the moment. Key area to aim for here, and when you're using your color, your white tools, your white balance tools, your grey picker tools, is the 2 grey areas there. Now they're actually the same color, and this is one of the benefits of having this cube. Besides being very portable, and it's still giving you a decent enough sized area to actually hit capture, you've got two sides to it. As long as you're pointing the black hole towards yourself, then basically you can shoot this at some point during your photo shoots in the lighting conditions you're in, and use the color picker to choose the lighter side of the gray area to set your gray balance. That's an 18% gray, and the good thing about this is it doesn't matter whether your lighting is changing or not. Whichever is the lighter side is the side to use, basically. That's the side to use as your guideline for this. Great little tool, and it comes able to hang. For instance, you can get somebody to hold it, for instance, in a photo shoot, or perhaps just hang on something, or you can tripod mount it. That little round sort of base to it is actually tripod mount screw there. So it really gives you that opportunity to have that aim point that you can use to set white points and grey points. Fantastic tool. And has the benefit of also being scratch resistant as well. So really quite a hardy little tool. Even if you do scratch it, it's actually pregnated all the way through. So therefore, you know, the grey, 18% grey goes all the way through. Likewise on the whites and the blacks there. So very, very useful tool. One of the best things I've had in my bag this year. And you know, I'm not shooting professionally anymore, but at the end of the day, it's something that great I can pull out. Whether I've got one of my decent cameras with me, or whether I've got just a camera phone with me, it's something I can set my white balance for my work with. So fantastic little tool. Top tip for this, if you do get one, when you put it in your pocket, make sure you put it in the little bag that comes with it, because clothing, unfortunately, provided you wash it, detergents on clothing have a little whitener in there, so they will bleach the actual cube there if you're not careful. So make sure you put that into, if it's going in your trouser pocket or whichever clothing pocket, pop it in the bag first. That's top tip for the day. Now, second tool, as I say, the other half of the Spider Checker Pro is the Spider Checker itself. Absolutely godsend this. The reason being, I'm sure a lot of us have had this situation. Perhaps in particular in the wedding photography environment, where you have shots that you're taking inside the church, shots that you're taking outside with the couple, and also, for instance, group scenes and so on, and then perhaps some shots later on in the actual reception. The trouble is, different lighting conditions, different lights, etc., etc., can cause some shots to look really bleached out, some shots to look, have a particular tone to them, blue tone or whatever. Key thing is adjust your colors. Get them back to a situation where everything is correct, everything is true, and it doesn't look as though your bride was perhaps tanned in one shot and pallid in another, or the dress has changed color. I mean, in particular, the dress, ironically, seems to be such a emotive factor in certainly in wedding photography. But of course, this same thing applies across any type of photography where you want to have some sort of guide to shoot for. And that's exactly what we're doing with the Spider Checker. Now, the good thing here is it's actually big enough to shoot from a distance. So it's not the small pocketable thing that the Cube is, but of course it works in conjunction with the Cube. You can actually tripod mount the Spider Checker, and there's a little pop-up spindle to tripod mount your Cube on top of that as well. But the key thing is it gives you the opportunity to shoot the 50+ colors here, and it knows, the software that comes with the Spider Checker knows what those colors should be. So that gives you this instant opportunity to affect the whole curve and contrast of your images, and therefore, provided you shoot the same target in each of the lighting conditions, then instantly it's going to set your color balance correctly for your images. So let's just quickly have a quick pop out of here, and let's shoot across into one of the tools that Bob was showing earlier on. This is Lightroom, actually. So just using this to host a photo shoot here. Now, in this case, I've only shot it the once, but I could have different lighting conditions, and therefore I would have shot this same guide in every one of those lighting conditions. Just a quick sort of, if you haven't seen it, or it's a very simple process. Basically, start off by choosing your color picker. In this case, set it to the E2 square, which is 12%, and then go into using your color picker tool here, just looking at the colors on the color ratings on the right-hand side here under the histogram. This should be somewhere around a 96% white, as mentioned, a 4% white if you like. And this should be somewhere around the 4% black, which they are. So we know that the actual tonal curve of the or the characteristic curve of the image is correct in this instance. And then all we need to do is just pop this open into the Spider Checker app. So this allows us to open up the software. It will just quickly check whenever you do this for any updates, but we won't need to worry about that. And it pops open your image, which you've cropped, obviously, in this case. So the intention is to crop it first once you've shot it, so you get as much of the actual Spider Checker in shot as possible. And then over that image, you then can overlay this preset selection of colors. Now, it knows exactly what these color swatches are, so you just drop those over the color swatches of the Spider Checker. Once you've done that, you can choose then to save it into your relevant software here. So therefore we can just give that a name, whatever it may be. So we'll call that outside, for instance. Oops. Outside. And this gives us instantly the opportunity to add another preset to our selection of tools. So therefore we've got opportunity there to apply that straight into a batch of images. So I can choose, for instance, a group here. I can't actually choose the one I've just created because you need to quit. In the case of Lightroom, you need to quit Lightroom in order to import a preset in. But rather than waste your time doing that, I'll just show you as we roll over here. We can see how I can apply a different preset to that, and you can see how that's warming up those images correctly to the way it was shot in the first place. So, popping back in here, as I say, that's one of the where we're quite short on time. That's one of the two highlights from Datacolor this year. I'm going to cover off a couple of other partner products in a minute. I will bring you back to the joys of the fundamental element that is Datacolor. You know, one of the leading manufacturers in the color management world, and this is something that you've seen some great effects from Bob tonight. So obviously Bob's been doing a sterling job with the new suite of software there, and you know the sort of capabilities now that you can actually deliver with that. And there's absolutely no point in using a large proportion of the retouching capability if you can't actually see properly what you're doing. Or at least you're certainly throwing a dice and relying on fate to give you a good end result. And that's where color management comes into its own, and of course that's where Datacolor solves this array of different displays, showing things differently, by giving you a very, very nice little solution in the form of a spider, which allows you to calibrate a whole range of different devices. So we've got screens, different types of tablet device nowadays, both Android and iOS, laptops obviously. Key thing with this is it's just a plug-in device, comes with software, allows you to follow a very simple software guidance through, tells you what to do, plug it in, warm the displays up, run the software, and then effectively it runs a selection of swatches in front of the eye of the device. There's a little eye on that spider, and you're just picking up colors that's being transmitted from the screen. Now the key thing here is, the reason why we're one of the leaders out there in this marketplace, is that we're using a specific device for transmissive color, i.e. something that's coming out from the screen. So we have a separate device for print-based calibration. We can perhaps touch on that later on. But the key thing here is this transmissive device means that you can use it for all these different types of devices. So you can use your Spider, for instance, to calibrate those iPads, or for instance, you can get into the world of Wacom tablets and the Cintiqs, for instance, a couple of new products this year, and again two of the highlight products from the year, which are the Cintiq 13 HD and the 24 HD. Two cracking new updated products from Wacom. You heard that Bob said that onOne's software there, the PhotoSuite 8, is tuned directly to work with these Wacom tablets. And of course, good thing is with the Cintiqs, you can actually work on the images on the actual display device yourself. You don't need a secondary display. So therefore, the Datacolor Spider is great to work in conjunction with that as well, because you can also calibrate your Cintiqs, as well as perhaps if you have got different displays around to work on, so you can have everything in tune. Now, a nice thing for you guys, one of those special promos, we've been working with one of our partners, DPS, out there, and they're offering 15% off of the Cintiqs as a Christmas special discount at the moment, or festive season special discount. So if you want to have a look at the new Cintiqs and take them up on that delightful offer, then go to the dpsb.co.uk site and they've got details there basically, so you can find out more about it. They're also doing a few other different promotions at the moment. They've got a promotion on the Epson R3000 printer. So again, go and check that out and see what other great bundles they've got on at the moment. Of course, on the subject of printers, we've got another area which needs color management, because you've got two ends to your color management really. We've already shown you, in fact, how we can really take color management right to the front end of your workflow. That spider checker giving you the opportunity to calibrate effectively your camera, in effect, or certainly your raw workflow, your front end workflow. It doesn't have to be raw, by the way. But the spider obviously giving you the opportunity to calibrate your screens and other devices that are using transmissive color. But at the back end, if you're printing out yourself, then the spider print is the ideal tool for that. Now, as you can see here, we have a device that, again, intentionally doesn't do screens as well. This is one device for specifically print, all the maths in there, all the optics, etc., specifically for print. The Spider 4, which you've already seen me talk about, specifically for screens. Spider Print, you use, as you can see here, a very simple tool to use. We actually reduce the cost quite dramatically here. Generally speaking, the RRP on this is somewhere around £299, so just over €300, for instance, compared to the thousands of pounds it costs for similar devices from other manufacturers, on the basis that we don't say, okay, print out these color charts and stick them on this nice moving automated flatbed. We give you this delightful, simple to use plastic guide, and you just have to roll down the guide by one increment each time, press the button at the start of the row, and roll that spider print across the slot of the guide there, just at a fairly sort of not very quick pace, not very slow pace, just a nice moving pace across the line of colors there. Just press it once at the start now, and that will read the entire line of colors, and it will tell you if you've read the colors correctly or not. It's intelligent, basically. It's watching what you're doing to make sure that you're not going too fast, going too slow, basically. And by taking out that automation, we've reduced the cost of this from thousands of pounds for other people's devices down to, as I say, somewhere around £299 for the spider print as a street price in the UK. In fact, I'm sure DPS, amongst others, will have some better prices than that. But of course, folks, you may not want to be printing out yourself. So therefore, we also have another excellent partner in the form of Vanilla Photo Books, one of the many types of album manufacturers out there. There's some other key printers we deal with, in the likes of GF Smith, another classic printer around the UK. Great guys who produce excellent print quality and print services at the back end of your workflow. Now, the key thing here is that if you want to, you could be producing, in this case, your albums just very simply with a downloadable software from the Vanilla site, and effectively do these online. It's a great little tool here for producing your photo books. So go online and have a look at Vanilla at the URL there. Another promotion from the guys at Vanilla is the fact that they've got a 25% discount code for any albums that are ordered. The promotion runs until the end of December. So using the Spider 20 code there. As it says in the bottom of the page there, anybody wanting anything ordered before Christmas, it's the 11th of December, folks. So tomorrow it'll run out. So you need to order by tomorrow. So after the webinar, perhaps a quick download of the software and get going on getting those Christmas albums organised, or perhaps alternatively, once you've done the Christmas and festive shots and whatever celebrations you're celebrating this holiday season, maybe you'll want to put an album together. So therefore, again, you've got that same discount available with that Spider 20 code, and that's available to you up until, as I say, the end of the month, so the end of December. So there's another one of the final, in fact, one of the promos for this evening as far as our partners are concerned. just a little reminder from us. So we've got a Christmas present, if you like, or a festive season present for you, and that's an ebook. If you haven't already got it, there's a free ebook that's available. Tonight we've really sort of skirted across the color management side of things very quickly, but if you want to find out more, go and download the ebook from this particular URL. This is the English version. There are French and German versions, but it looked like we had a mainly English-speaking attendee list this evening. So basically, this will give you loads and loads of tips. It's a many page ebook that you can read, and gives you loads of information as far as how to color manage both your screens, your printers, etc., etc. So and handle that sort of situation. Also, if you want to, folks, we've got a whole bunch of information on our YouTube site. So if you want to see any of the products, for instance, the Spider Cube and Checker there that I was talking about earlier on, go to our YouTube site, and you'll see a lot more video-based information. In fact, if you want to see a recording of tonight's presentations as well, you'll probably see that popped up there in the not too distant as well. And likewise, if you want to give us some feedback, go to our. Be good to hear from you. Nice to get some interaction going. Although we will give you a chance to ask some questions in a few minutes' time. And lastly, if you do have any technical queries, technical questions, please either go to the telephone number on the top line there, or raise a ticket with us on our support help desk there, and our illustrious team of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed technicians can come back to you and answer your questions and queries. So, folks, I think, he says, well, about a minute early, actually. I did rush in through all that lot there. But I'm going to say, at this point, thank you very much, folks. It's been a great pleasure having the opportunity to talk to you tonight, and thank you to Bob. Now, we are going to open up the session to your questions in a second, but I'll just say now to Bob already, thank you very much, and wishing you all the very best for the holiday season for all of you out there. So, I think with that, it's over to Boris at this point to say, Boris, do you want to take back over, and we'll open up the room for questions.
Yeah, okay. I already opened the questions, so please feel free to enter all the questions you have. And I would like to remind you to one last slide I would like to show you. It's about the webinars we have. At the moment, for the end of the year, we have one webinar. It's a German one, but we will have soon, Rich, that's for you. We need some confirmations to have a few more English webinars to come here. Okay, and I can see the first question. Yeah, so please come along and register.
Yeah, Mr. Lawrence is on, I see. So
yeah. Hi, Mark. Sorry.
Can I remind you of the file name of the right? Hang on. So can you please remind me of the file name of the free download of Perfect Effects 4 Premium Edition software that was special onOne software with this? Whoa. Apart from that, what limitations and what system requirements are there in the free download edition? Thank you. Bob, that's possibly a question for you, mate.
If we can just make a note of the name of the customer and get the email address, I can send the download links to the customer. Okay.
Great. Okay. Thanks, man.
Bob, I'll post it to you.
Thanks, Boris.
In the chat, in the internal, and I'll drop you a line. No problem.
Fantastic.
A question here from someone about am I meant to profile the printer and not use the manufacturer's ICC profiles for each and every type of paper? So entirely up to you, Jason. I mean, you've got the opportunity here to use the profiles that come with a lot of papers and printers nowadays. The recommendation would be that it's probably far more accurate for you to produce your own profiles. Hence, the spider print being a great tool for producing those profiles on a very bespoke basis. It gives you the opportunity to be using different types of inks, different types of stock, for instance, and allow for those changes there. So absolutely good if you are already using your existing profiles that come with the paper, because that's a great start anyway. But secondly, even better if you can produce your own profiles as far as that's concerned. So hopefully that's answered that question for you. Okay, so we've already done that one.
Okay, we have okay.
Cool.
A question from Jason. You have answered already, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, just on the subject of photos coming out a bit dark when you're using some perhaps existing profiles, it may not be that your profiles are wrong.
No,
It may be more down to the fact that you're not soft-proofing, basically. So you need to have some solution in your workflow to soft-proof what you're doing. So therefore, being able to turn on and see how, when you're applying a profile, how that's going to come out. So that might be the missing ingredient in the scenario there.
And there's one other important information, Jason. Please make sure that on the monitor's calibration, you use the right brightness adjustment. That means measure the ambient light, because if your monitor is, let's say, a little bit too bright, and the brightness is in according to the ambient light situation, you have to make sure that is the right setting there, because if the monitor is too bright, you wouldn't correct your image to be bright enough, so the output will be too dark. So that's the reason why, very often. If the color is okay and the images are too bright or too light, it's almost all time that the brightness of the monitor is just 1.
Cool. Got a question about Spider for calibrating IMAX and the glass screen on the front there. Yes, perfectly possible to do so. Just a sort of a word of warning. You're obviously comparing it to another manufacturer's product there, and yeah, we tend to have somewhat better results with our products. One word of warning would be just to make sure you try and avoid any light coming in from the sides, because that can bounce around inside that glass front of your iMac. So try and shelter the sides when you're doing your calibration side of things. Okay.
That's an important point.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, some. I think we've covered the questions there already.
Yeah. Okay.
Bob, any? Sorry, I was just going.
Please. The last one there. Laptop's colors.
Any hints if we do another one of these?
Please do so.
Of you, Boris. Well, I'm not actually sure what that's referring to. So
there was another question from Jason about the laptop colors on great, but it's calibrated. Okay, yeah. If you use a laptop, you see very often the best thing is to do calibrate in the dark and use the brightness setting native on a laptop. That can be okay here, because a laptop is very limited regarding color space. That's just a fact.
I was surprised to see that the Cintiqs, actually, I was talking about earlier on, are 98% or 97% of Adobe RGB gamut, actually. So not only incredibly nice to use, but very good color-wise as well. So
you see,
better than my Mac laptop.
Yeah, you see, to be honest, if you have a look in the market, you will see there's at least one Asus laptop. HP has the screens where they have an option which they call Dream Color, and there are screens that are able to go up to 95% of Adobe RGB, which is only what you can reach on serious desktop screens. But you see, if you count them all over, you will find at the end, I think, less than 5, or I would say at least less than 10 different models on the market at all. You see, all others will be sRGB or less. That's it. So it's very
And
seldom. And you
unfortunately,
have,
yeah,
please.
unfortunately, my laptop this year started off at the start of the year with 97% of sRGB on my nice Retina display. I now have 93% of sRGB, so that's rather proven the point about how things can change with time as well. So
Yeah.
definitely worthwhile making sure you keep a regular track of your calibration of your screens as well, folks, irrespective of what the starting point is. So,
Okay, we have another question here. What are the benefits of buying a new Spider 4 over a Spider 3 Studio? Again, as Jason. Jason, very easy to explain, you see. It's the advantage is the Spider 4 Elite versus the Spider 3 Elite you have in the Spider Studio package. So there's no difference in the print sensor. So just keep the print sensor and just download the most recent print Spider print software, and that's it. But on the Spider sensor for the monitor calibration, there's a huge difference. The Spider 4 generation is 26% more accurate. That's one point here. The reason behind is it looks from outside, it looks identical from the shape, but the internal is new. And the most important difference is that the filters are double coated. And this is on durability, and due to the reason we have a new sensors inside, and so we have been possible to reach the quality of measurement by 26%. That's on the hardware, but we have more on the software. The software has been enhanced with new functionalities, especially on checking on monitor quality analysis. But the most important point from software, the two most important points are that the software now can communicate with the Datacolor database on monitors. We have a screen database in the web where the software can have access to, if you allow. It's just the option share your measurement results with the Datacolor database. And it's a bidirectional communication because, for example, if you do not know what type of LED backlight you have, if it's an RGB LED backlight or if it's a white LED backlight, just leave the question to be unknown. If you do not know if you have a large gamut or a normal gamut display, just leave the question to be unknown and let the software do the job. The only thing you have to do is allow the software to communicate with the database. And then the software retrieves this information from the database and get all the characteristics on your screen. And for those who have a laptop, you see sometimes laptops come with different screen types. Like, for example, MacBooks in the past. You had the normal one and you had the high-res one. You had the glossy ones, the non-glossy ones. It's not looking for the laptop, it's looking for the screen model. So that's what's in the database. So all the information is there. And so it gets the characteristics. And there's one more point which is important from my point of view. The Spider 4 allows you to calibrate not only the iOS devices, it's also working with Android devices. That's only the Spider 4. So that's the reason to upgrade there. And something that's not possible with the Spider 3 hardware.
Yeah, it's certainly something that has been very useful as far as having a portable portfolio nowadays and being able to show your work on any sort of tablet. You know, we've now got that capability to be calibrating those Android and iOS devices with the 4. So that's a cracking benefit, basically.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like we've run out of questions, which is nice. Gives us a little opportunity to just ask Bob. Obviously, we got to see a little snippet of the new photo suite this evening. What else is there, Bob? When we return after the holiday break, could we get you back on to show us some more exciting stuff? What else have you got in there?
Oh, definitely. There's an entire plugin that I didn't show called Perfect Enhance. But we don't always show that. It depends on the audience. But if you've got people who use, for instance, Lightroom, they have And Photoshop Bridge, I should say, as well, and Aperture, they enhance images already. So Perfect Enhance is really aimed at the standalone use of the suite. But yeah, there's quite a few bits and pieces in there that we could show. So yeah, you know, in the new year, if you guys, we love working with Datacolor. You're our preferred partner for calibration, obviously. So you know, if we look at some of the key features, the big draws, the most interesting parts of the suite are definitely things like masking, perfect effects, and that sort of thing. So we'll definitely build some webinars to present those sorts of ideas alongside what you offer as well.
Cool, good stuff, mate. Well, hopefully we'll have planning a next webinar over here post the Society show in mid-January. So it'll probably be towards the end of January we'll be doing that. So
Yeah.
look forward to getting you back on board for that then. But,
Okay. We have another question here, which I think it is important to answer. The question is, what's the difference between Spider 4 and Spider 4 Elite? To be honest, this is the question is not 100% complete. It should be. You see, we have three different models of Spider 4. We have the Express, we have the Pro, and we have the Elite. Starting with the Express, which is the basic one. The Express is good for a calibration of a monitor if you use it only for web purpose, because the Express sensor does not have an ambient measurement functionality. There's no ambient light sensor in the Express. So that's the reason why we say only in conjunction with web. If you do prints, you need the ambient light situation, as mentioned with the question, oh, my print was not bright enough. So because you need to measure the brightness of the room to have the correct brightness of the screen, to have in the end the correct brightness in the image in the print. And therefore you need at least the Pro. Also the Pro and the Elite allows you to calibrate more than one monitor per computer. The Express is limited only to one monitor per computer. So if you, for example, have a MacBook Pro with an external monitor, you can do with the Express only one, the primary one, and with the Pro and the Elite you can calibrate both at the same time. On Windows, make sure you have a graphic card that has a dual LUT table. That's a lookup table. That's a Windows issue which is more or less solved by newer graphic cards, so that's no problem. Usually no problem nowadays. The next difference between the Pro and the Elite. Now, the Pro has the basic or has the functionalities for printing and pre-press environment. Those settings are there. It has the ability, the Pro has the ability to do monitor calibration and to do a monitor analysis, and that helps you, for example, to find out what about the presets of your monitor, because you see in the past you did a calibration, you said, okay, I set my monitor to 6500 Kelvin. I have gamma 2.2 and I go for 120 candelas per square meter. That's the default and recommendation for LCDs. But if you have a look at your monitor, you will find out, okay, there's a preset called game, the next one is film or movie, then we have one is called office. And you don't know what's behind because they are not the settings like you had in the past where you can say, okay, I would like to have the color temperature to be 6500 or 9300 or whatever. And therefore there's a functionality built in to measure what's behind such presets, what was arranged by the marketing department of the manufacturer of the monitor. And when we go next, on top, we come to the Elite. The Elite is by hardware. The sensor is identical to the Pro, so for those who purchase the Pro today, you cannot purchase the upgrade to have an Elite later, because the Elite gives you the opportunity to do front projector calibration, It has a functionality built in, which is the iterative gray balance. That means it does a finer steps in calibration where the system detects there is a larger deviation between what the monitor should like and what it is like on color. So the result will be much more accurate, especially that's important if you do black and white, because whenever there's something in one of the three colors of RGB, a black and white will be not perfect anymore. And there's a special tool to adjust monitors among each other, because if you have, for example, a wide gamut monitor, if you have a normal gamut monitor, and you have them beside each other and you want to have them identical, a calibration won't do this by itself, because the calibration will give you a monitor that shows all the colors he can show in a proper way. But if the monitor shows different color spaces or use different backlight technologies, the reception by your eyes is different, and the Spider 4 Elite, which is the top model, has a functionality to compensate this. So that's the range we have, and I hope that makes it understandable. The recommendation would be for most of you to go at least for the Pro or for the Elite. Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Boris. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, certainly. Pro, definitely. I think, but the Elite, if you can stretch that a little bit more, or you can always upgrade it later, isn't it?
Yep.
Couple of quick feeds in. The delightful Mr. Mark Lawrence from GF Smith, lovely print company, points out that you can get hoods for your iMacs. Further to the question earlier on about calibrating iMacs, you can get hoods there that fit around and hence stop that ingress of light from the sides there. And that was at pchood.co.uk. And also last question from someone with regard to we've mentioned a society show that both Bob and I are at in January. That's the SWPP. So you can see more about them at swpp.co.uk. And the societies are running a conventions, probably one of the biggest photo shows in the UK, and certainly one of the biggest probably worldwide, specifically for wedding photography and portraiture. And that's in London, and it's I think 15th through the 20th of January. I think it's open exhibition or open convention for anybody within the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 17th, or 8th. It must be the 18th, 19th, and 20th. So, as I say, you can find out more details at swpp.co.uk. And I think, folks, that's probably it. It looks like we're running out of questions, or run out of questions. So hopefully this evening has been educational and informative for you. I've certainly learned some stuff from Bob there. Looks really good. I'm really waiting to can't wait to get my teeth into the suite of software. So I think from that point of view, we'll just say once again thank you very much to Bob, and I'm sure Boris wants to wrap it up now, so pass over to Boris.
Okay, thank you. So, Bob, it was a pleasure for us having you here, as Richard said. Thank you, and thank you for sharing all this information with us. Hope to see you soon again in Datacolor webinar. And I would like to thank you to everybody in the name of Datacolor. Hope you have enjoyed the evening as I did, and see you soon again. Have a good Christmas and a Happy New Year. If we don't return this year, and see you next year on another webinar. So Bob, it's you to close down this webinar here, and it's from me, from Boris, good night and see you soon again. Bob, your turn, please.
Thanks, Boris. Thanks, Richard. This has been a real pleasure working with you guys again. So yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for turning up. Thanks. We really do appreciate your time and effort listening to everything. Just want to wish you a really good Christmas and talk to you again in the new year. Cheers, everybody.